I did miss a few.
In a 2007 interview, 2 years before his death, the Reverend Max Coots discusses his poem Winter in an interview on New York Public Radio. He states that he was a very young minister at the time and had just witnessed the rather horrible death of one of his congregants to bone cancer. He was supposed to write a sermon on a different topic that day and found that he couldn't do it. Instead, he said, I wrote a rather lengthy poem on winter and experiencing winter as a metaphor for one's own being, as well as the weather outside. And as you heard, in the opening words, Max Coots was quite a gardener. He presented this poem that he had written as the sermon the next day and said that it was so popular, he eventually expanded this metaphor into a book called Seasons of the South. I stumbled on this poem last winter and was very moved by it, mainly, I think, because last winter was so long, and we didn't see the ground for most of the winter. We had snow covering it for the whole winter, which is not the case this time. I could actually say that I looked forward to the snow. I might be one of the few, but I looked forward to the snow this year. Well, without knowing the background then, I read the poem and I thought, this will make a great talk. Lo and behold, that's what it was written as. So this morning, I share it with you. Winter by Max Coots. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just me.
No one says much good of winter, except as something hard that exaggerates the spring reprieve. Spring, people seem to understand. Spring speaks to us when winter has been so long, we seem bone-cold and brown-husked in housebound apathy. It speaks now green, coming out of mud like a waking up. Though spring is really nothing much compared to summertime. It's barely warm, feels very warm. And the bits of color that spot the new bare ground sparsely seem to the mind as though the world were full of crocus heads and green spikes pointing up. How we resent those last streaks of snow that hide in the shadows. Even the mud seems good. Poets and backyard potterers extol the virtues of spring with words and seed catalog banners. Even yesterday's snow-happy children celebrate with the launching of 1,000 twig ships in March snow turned to April puddles. No one says much good of winter. If anyone had a kind word to say of it, it would be drowned out. For spring is full of noise for all of its quietness. For most, out of sight, out of mind is true. And as if to make it truer faster, the brooms of spring cleaning set about to sweep it out of doors, rags wash it from the windows, rakes scrape it from the lawn, as if it were a dirty thing. No one says much good of winter. Sometimes, though, house-free people walking out in spring will stop in passing to comment smugly on past temperatures and snowfalls. They talk like veterans from some victorious army at peacetime conventions, recalling how it was when winter was, how it was they went hat-helmeted and coat-armored, making tracks through its efforts, and spotting its white-on-white with wool colors. They reminisce about how they went with shovels to chop winter walls into paths and paths. They speak as though cold and snow would never happen again. Spring is a cockiness in people, like a bad night dream remembered with a laugh at noon. Then summer settles in. Spring pride grows satisfied by June. It's a kind of fickleness in July and August that brings complaints about the heat. The winter veterans, gone from spring excitement to summer that brought too much green to appreciate, call across the lawnmower handles, hot enough for you? Change again from August dustiness to ripe September. Indifferent summer changes then to fall. And vagrant thoughts of other snows intrude from time to time, but only mildly yet, for everything gets excited as in spring with color. But we, like trees, live out the easy days with a kind of mock bravado, a sort of last defiant smile for cold nights and falling leaves. But even autumn ends. Frost sees to that. What cold had turned too much green to never enough yellow, red, and rust, having gingerly felt its way with bribes of brilliance, seems to grow more confident. One day, it melts the late squash blossoms and curls the garden leaves from green to brown with nothing happy in between. If we could, we wouldn't talk of it, but we have to speak of it because of children. They think it's snow. We have to tell them, no, it's frost. Leaf color dries to brown, is raked, counted as nothing much, and burned, except the few pressed and waxed ones that sentiment keeps on into snow time, or the few rebellious ones that wind hides tangled in among bushes and stems, or that summer gardeners heap for compost, or for winter coats on plants that can't retreat indoors in pots and sunroom windows. After so much color in our eyes, after this, we haven't many words to say of autumn's last few days. It just is. No one says so. It just is. And we let it go. A sort of dull, bare waiting after doing. Autumn tiredness settles on us, who, having seen them oftentimes before, spring, summer, autumn, retire to wait. While children, not sure just where it is that they belong, go from one side of the house doors to another, indecisively, tracking mud from cold October rain inside to remind us of the past. A dull, bare waiting, looking out at stick trees. No one says much of it. It just is. Then one night or day, it's all the same one time as another. The waiting ends. A white ending. Sometimes it is in thick, tangled blobs that melt on whatever little summer sun the ground has stored. Sometimes it is in sharp, fast pieces hissing. Sometimes it is a slow, dogged laying down of layer upon layer. But however it comes, it always finds us unprepared. Yet wait. Strange that we should take the leaves as truth, and think that just because they fall, the tree is dead. A pulling back, a rest, a new anticipation, yes. But the leaves are liars, bright, gaudy things catching our eyes with their clown suits. The farmer used to know things about the snow that we ought to know. The farmer used to call the snow the poor man's fertilizer. A homely sort of name, a crude but honest thing to call this drifting promise. It is next year's water and next year's grain, fall's end and spring's beginning. So when was it that we learned that the earth would end? In autumn? Never. When did we ever learn that life was always summertime and spring and harvest time? When was it that someone guaranteed a year of 12 Julys, complete with everlasting picnics and never-ending potato salads? What sort of quaint, mistaken almanac said spring could come without December? that life was all in June, and that May and August go on forever. Even winter in ourselves may be the poor soul's fertilizer. And spring within can only come if some winter has come first. Can come if something like a seed is kept alive through wintering, to sprout and to grow. To sprout and grow because of winter and the wintering.